Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are still on the 14th of June 2021, and as I mentioned in the last video, both Scotland and Sweden are kicking off their Euro 2021 campaigns today. So I'm just fresh from watching the Scotland game. Unfortunately, the motherland lost 2-0 to the Czech Republic. First off, I think the Czech goalkeeper and defence, they played an absolute blinder. Scotland created some really good chances, but the Czechs blocked them and saved them all really well. So, you know, kudos to them for that. On a different day, the result might have been different, of course, if we'd had a wee bit of luck or whatever. But I thought the Czech defence and goalkeeper were absolutely solid. The two goals, the first one was a beautiful header right in the bottom corner, pretty much unsavable. The second one was an awesome finish, but David Marshall, what the hell were you doing so far off your line? On the positive side of things, I thought the midfield played really well. We're seeing a bit of a different brand of football from Scotland. The midfield can carry the ball forward, they can turn, they can play the ball, really nice close passing and things like that. So I think Steve Clarke has really taken the Scotland team in the right direction, and I look forward to seeing more of these young players in the campaigns going forward, and fingers crossed we get a few better results. But now we can focus on Sweden. Sweden, of course, are kicking off against Spain a little bit later tonight, and I think the Swedish team's kind of in a similar position to the Scottish one. Quite a few young players who seem to be very good prospects. I saw that Andreas Grankvist and Sebastian Larsson are still in the squad, two of my favourite Swedish players, so quite cool to see them still going at like 35, 36 actually, so it'd be nice to see them playing again. There's a few good young players in there, like I say, Alexander Isak. I loved him when he was at Dortmund. He never got much of a chance, and I still think they made a big mistake selling him, but he's been doing very well in the Spanish league. Looking forward to seeing Jordan Larsson. Not seen too much of him actually, but his father, of course, was a terrific player, probably my favourite Swedish player of all time, and I'm looking forward to seeing Dejan Kuzelewski as well. He's supposed to have been very good in Serie A this year for Juventus, so yeah, hopefully the Swedish team can get a better result than the Scottish team, but yeah, looking forward to the match later on, so kom igen Sverige. But yeah, to celebrate Sweden's campaign kicking off, much as we did with the Scottish one, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good few times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, and I would say that this brewery are well known for their kind of traditional German and English style beers, and it's one of my favourite styles of beer, I think, that we're going to take a look at today. So very much looking forward to this one, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this one then, we are going to head to Örebro, which is out to the west of Stockholm, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Närke Kulturbryggeri. So this particular beer is called the Katalysator, if I'm pronouncing that right, basically the catalyzer, if we want to translate it into English, but it comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a Rauchbock. So yeah, a combination of two of my favourite beers actually. If you've watched the channel before, you might happen to know that my whole love of craft beer started off with the Bamberg Rauch beers. So I love my smoked beers, and I do enjoy a good Doppelbock as well, but I am wondering exactly what kind of bock this one is going to be. But at 8%, I think it's maybe safe to assume that this will be either a kind of strong Maibock, if you like, or a strong Hellerbock, or it will be a proper Doppelbock. We'll just need to see. But yeah, this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the Lokal Småskalig assortment through Systembolaget for April of 2021. And this beer's been sitting in my fridge for a little bit. I just never got around to reviewing it, but you know, when you have a smoked beer, that pretty much saturates your palate. So this is one that you want to kind of keep on its own and review separately from other things. But yeah, certainly looking forward to trying it. Always nice to return to Närke Kulturbryggeri. Of course, these guys are one of the really well established breweries here in Sweden, and I'm sure this one will be another interesting beer from them. I've had some really good German and English stuff from these guys over the years. But yeah, let's crack on with this review then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Närke Kulturbryggeri before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Närke Kulturbryggeri. So yeah, Närke Kulturbryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Örebro, and the company was founded back in 2003, which makes it one of the older and more established craft breweries here in Sweden, as I've repeated a few times already. But the company was founded by Håge Victorson and Berit Karlsson. So Håge Victorson had a career as a photographer and an artist before he became a brewer, and Berit is actually the CEO of the company and also the chair of the Swedish Independent Brewers Association, or in Swedish, Sverige Oberoende Mikrobryggerier Myndighet. So yeah, pretty cool actually, quite an interesting team, and they were of course husband and wife. But for a long time this brewery were only producing keg beer, and it's more recently that they started producing bottles, which actually helped them grow quite substantially, and this came about after they bought the former brew kit and bottling machine of Nynäshamns Ångbrygge, who were of course the first Swedish craft brewery. The Bedero Bitter that they did is the kind of first Swedish craft beer, I guess you could say. But the brewery currently produce around 100,000 litres of beer per year, and they're particularly famous for the Kagen Stormax Porter, which was rated as the world's best beer for quite a long time on Rate Beer. This beer was first produced in 2004 simply as Stormax Port, but then later when they aged it in bourbon barrels it became known as Kagen Stormax Port. There's quite a few different varieties of it these days and a few different vintages, so I need to see about getting a hold of some of the different vintages and things like that. But some of my followers very kindly sent me bottles of that beer, so I've reviewed it in English, and you will see a Swedish review come for that one at some point in the fairly near future. I'm saving that one for a certain special occasion, so you will see a Swedish review of the Kagen Stormax Port at some point. But yeah, sadly in September of 2020 Håge Victorson died. He is considered, you know, one of the godfathers of Swedish brewing. I would have loved to have featured him here on the channel for a Meet the Brewer segment, but unfortunately that just wasn't to be. Thankfully though, the brewery are carrying on. The brewers Emil Arvidsson and Jörgen Hjerling are also co-owners in the company these days, and they're taking care of the production side of things. As of June 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 145 different kinds of beer, and as I mentioned earlier, I would say that this brewery are known mainly for their kind of traditional German styles and also for their English beers as well. Actually, I've had a lot of nice traditional English and German beers from these guys over the years, and I do keep an eye on what they're releasing actually. So yeah, if you're into the English and German stuff, this is a brewery that you definitely want to check out. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Närke Kulturbryggeri for the moment, other than the fact that their name is taken from a kind of historical region of which Örebro is a part. Närke is that kind of region out to the west of Stockholm, a little bit like Småland further south, which is now, you know, Kalmar and Blekinge. I don't think, was Blekinge part of Småland? I'm not quite sure. But yeah, there's quite a few historic provinces in Sweden that are not sort of legal entities these days, I guess we could say. But yeah, Närke is one of them, of course. But yeah, you can check out, if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get cracking with this one then. So as you can see, this is a 330ml bottle. They sometimes release beers in 500s and sometimes they release them in 330s. I'm not sure how they choose, because the Pilsner that we had before, I think that would have actually been sold, that would have been better if they sold that in a half litre rather than the 330. But you know, for a Doppelbock like this, or a Rauch Doppelbock, I guess we could say, you know, probably a third litre, probably a 330ml bottle is about adequate for that. But yeah, I think I paid about 40 Swedish kronor for this one, so this was about €4 if I remember rightly, somewhere in the region of £3.50 sterling, and I guess maybe about, you know, that would work out about $4.75, something like that, just so that those of you watching in different parts of the world have a bit of a price reference for this. Swedish beer, of course, Nordic beer, by any description, is a little bit more expensive because of labour costs and things like that, but relative to salaries and stuff, it's not too bad. I think the Swedish prices for craft beers are actually cheaper through Systembolaget than some of the Scottish beers back home in the motherland. So yeah, I never complain about Systembolaget in that regard. But you can see this one there on the top of the bottle is the Närke Kulturbryggeri symbol. It also has the trademark Inget Bläsk, which basically means it's not pish, it's not shite, if you want to translate it into English. But it also says on here, von Anfang an mit Feuer gebraut, so from the beginning brewed with fire. So yeah, pretty cool. But as you can see, Rauchbock, and it kind of takes its name, of course, from the traditional, you know, the traditional German examples of the style. You know, the Salvator from Paulaner, the you know, the Celebrator is probably the most famous one from Ayinger, and the Maximator from Augustiner. I've had quite a few of the Doppelbocks actually. I think there's still one or two though from the big Munich 6 that I need to have a look at. The Animator from Hackerp Shore. Trying to remember I can't remember the names of the other ones offhand, of course, but I do love a Doppelbock. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, my love of beer started with the Bamberg Rauch beers, the likes of Schlenkerla and of course Spezial a little bit later on, and I would recommend that you try those. Very, very unique beers, big kind of meaty, woody flavours that you get out of them. When it comes to the Bock beers though, these are quite interesting. So the Bock beers originate from a place called Einbeck in Germany, which is in one of the Saxon states. I forget if it's Saxon-Anhalt, but the name Bock for these beers actually came about because the Münchners, when the Einbeckers took their beers down to Munich, the Münchners made fun of the way that the Einbecker's accent basically, and they kind of mocked it and called it Bock beer, which means goat in German. So that's why many examples of the Doppelbocks and things like that have goats on them. It's a kind of reference to the fact that Bock means goat. But they're lovely beers that actually I can't remember off the top of my head whether the Bocks, I think the Bocks are lager beers, so they're bottom fermenting yeasts, cold temperature fermentation, but yeah, they're usually quite malty leaning lager beers actually, a bit of caramel and biscuit and things out of them, but I really do enjoy a good Bock beer. The Doppelbock is even better actually. A nice big kind of malty Doppelbock always goes down quite well, and a Rauchbock I think is a very interesting combination. So yeah, very much looking forward to this one. 8% ABV, the Katalysator from Närke Kulturbryggeri in Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Really looking forward to this, as I've said. So, nice little bit of smoke on the opening there with this one, and we'll get it out and into the glass. There we go. Right, okay. So, going by the colour, I'm going to assume that this one is more of a kind of Hellerbock actually. So I think it's a smoked Hellerbock, this one. So yeah, you get quite a few different types of Bock beers. You get the Maibock, the Hellerbock, which is the lighter one, and you get the Doppelbock. And just going from the colour of this one, it certainly looks a little bit more like a lighter Hellerbock actually. So yeah, interesting, definitely interesting. So before the head disappears on this one, I'd say that it's poured with a 2/3 finger of a kind of fawn coloured head there. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. And in terms of the colour, I'd say that this one is a nice kind of deep, rich amber. So remember, when it comes to the colour of these beers, it's determined by 1, the type of malts that you use. Usually this determines the magnitude of the colour of the beer. 2, the length of your wort boil plays a role as well. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. And any adjuncts and barrel aging are of course going to play a role with that as well. But yeah, as you can see with this one, when it comes to a Doppelbock, normally you would expect something a little bit darker than this. So I have had this from Närke Kulturbryggeri in the past, when they've released beers as Doppelbocks, but then they're more like Doppelhellerbocks rather than a kind of traditional Doppelbock like the Celebrator or the the Maximator or something like this. So yeah, this one I think will be a smoked Hellerbock rather than anything else. So a smoked light bock beer, if you like. But at 8%, I think you probably could consider this one as a Doppelbock. That's the strength you would get. I think the Celebrator actually is about 7%, and I think the other ones, the Assam Bock from Weltenberg, I think that's about 7.5%, 8%. So yeah, this one is definitely one of the, it's kind of leaning towards the sort of stronger region, if you like, for the Doppelbocks actually. So yeah, Doppelhellerbock this one, a Doppelheller Rauchbock, I guess we could say. But yeah, certainly looks nice, and I have to say I'm very curious to see how this one turns out now. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. It's a beautiful smelling beer, that, I'll say that straight away. So yeah, straight off with this one, it's got that awesome traditional German character to it, but the Rauch malt just kind of dominates the aroma, as you would want from these beers. But yeah, straight away with this one, you can smell that nice kind of smooth bready backbone to it. There's definitely a bit of a bread crusty backbone in there, some nice kind of wholemeal brown bread, almost a little bit like a sweet German rye bread. I really miss the German bakeries from when I lived down there. I used to go there pretty much every Saturday and pick up a bit of rye bread for the week ahead. But yeah, you can smell that lovely bready German base to this one. There's definitely some woody undertones in there as well, and then you're getting that big meaty Rauch malt quality in this. So one place I would recommend that you visit in Germany is Bamberg. It's kind of to the north of the north of Nuremberg, and that region in the north of Bavaria is called Franken, and there you will find the highest density of breweries per head of population anywhere in the world. And Bamberg is a particularly famous town, of course, but Schlenkerla and Spezial are the two breweries there that are known for these Rauch malts. They're usually smoked by burning beechwood, and some of them, of course, are smoked by burning oak wood as well. The Eiche Rauch malts. But yeah, it's just such a distinctive aroma, and you get that out of this one straight away. So you get that lovely kind of meaty, kind of porky sort of thing out of this beer. You can smell that. That kind of dominates. You get a bit more of a woody note out of it as well. But you're also getting a wee bit of brown sugar coming out of this beer too. So for me, some sweet caramel for sure, a bit of a toasty brown sugar element also, and then some nice kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type qualities in there as well. So yeah, it kind of has everything you would expect. The sort of lighter brown sugars that you get out of this one, like the sweeter caramel and the biscuit, those are the characteristics that would make me say this beer is more of a Hellerbock rather than a straight up Doppelbock. And you know, the colour is the other thing. A regular Doppelbock will be more of a kind of mahogany colour rather than an amber. But yeah, it certainly has everything you would expect aroma wise when it comes to a Rauch Bock, if that makes sense. But as I say, Hellerbock, not a Doppelbock in a sense. So yeah, the aroma of this one is very, very nice. And it's just so nostalgic for me. As I've told you before, I love my traditional German beers. I love a good Bock beer, and then if it's a Rauch Bock, even better. So cannot complain about this. That, I think, covers everything we really need to say about the malty side of things. But yeah, it really leans towards that meaty, smoky, woody kind of note the further on you go. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, on the hoppy side of things, it's kind of what you would expect. This beer, I suspect, will be using Hallertau or Tettnanger hops, the traditional German hops. They're usually about 4.5–5% alpha acid. You get ones that are slightly higher, like Pearl and Hercules and stuff like this. But this one smells, you know, pretty typical in the sense it's not got so much of the kind of spicier qualities that you'll get from the slightly higher alpha acid hops there. But yeah, a little bit of smooth earthiness to this one, a wee bit of a kind of herbal quality in there. You get some floral aromaticity and a bit of a lighter kind of grassy note to the beer as well. But overall, I would say the green component really leans towards, it leans a little bit more towards the kind of grassy side of things rather than anything else. But yeah, the floral, the green side of the hops in this beer is pretty much what you would expect from a traditional German lager beer, if you like. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's got quite a dried fruity aroma to it. There's one or two little red fruity elements, and also some of the kind of more kind of peary, appley sort of things that you'd expect. So for me, yeah, quite a little bit of pear in this one. There is a wee tiny bit of a sort of dried apricot quality to this one, maybe very slight, maybe a very slight appley note to it, but there's also a wee touch of a fig and a slightly, you know, you've got a wee bit of that kind of sharper, raisiny kind of note coming out of this one as well. So that's interesting, a good balance between I'd say that the kind of appley, peary, dried apricot notes, they're more dominant in this one, but you just have that wee edge of a kind of figgy and slightly raisiny note coming out of this one. So yeah, a really interesting aroma this one. I don't think I've ever had a smoked Heller Bock in a sense, so I think this one could be a very, very interesting tasting experience. So yeah, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it, but I think it is about time that we try this beer now. So yeah, this one is the Katalysator, Catalyzer in English, coming in at 8% ABV, a Rauchbock, or a Rauch Heller Bock, Rauch Heller Doppelbock potentially, from Närke Kulturbryggeri. in Örebro out to the west of Stockholm. Good luck to Sweden in the game. Looking forward to it. Let's get stuck into this beer. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh, it's interesting. A bit drier than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, again, very nicely done. It is. I'm going to say straight away, this is quite a quirky beer. Not had anything that's quite like this before, I would say. Yeah, where to start with this one? The smokiness you get out of this is actually quite, it really gets a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste, which is quite interesting. I wasn't expecting that from it. Now, one of the things I would say, one of the main differences between the German Rauch malts and the Scottish peated malts, of course, they're smoky as well. The Scottish peated malts tend to be a little bit more kind of more dry and grassy and earthy and things like that. This beer, it doesn't have the same flavour profile of that, but it's got the same sort of general vibe, if that makes sense. The Rauch malts that are coming out of this one just feel a little bit sort of drier in a sense. But yeah, it works very, very well. So thumbs up to Närke Kulturbryggeri. They've done something a little bit different with this. I would love to see these guys do a proper kind of celebrator type Doppelbock though, because as I say, I'm pretty sure the Doppelbocks that I've had from this brewery before have been like, you know, the Maibock, Hellerbock variety. So I would love to see them do a little bit more of a brown sugary bock beer. I have no idea whether the brewers will watch this taste, and I think some of them haven't. I think they've watched one or two of them in the past, but I would love to see them do a proper German Dunkel and you know, a Doppelbock in the sort of traditionally understood sense, if you like. But this is a nice beer, let's say straight away. So the backbone of this beer, then, you can feel a nice kind of bread crusty quality just go right across the middle of your palate there. That's in the middle third and the back third of your palate. Sitting on top of that, you've got a bit of a smooth kind of brown bready sort of thing coming out to it, but infused within that, you've got a bit of graininess, of course, and then you've got the kind of Rauch malty notes coming out of the beer too. So it's got a lovely dryness to it, some kind of woody elements as well, and I really like how all of that pieces together. I really like how all of that pieces together in this beer for sure. So yeah, this beer gets a big thumbs up from me in that regard. Yeah, the malty backbone of this one is just really, really nice. But you can feel, the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, I think the kind of more meaty flavours, they kind of sit in the very middle of your palate, in that middle third of your tongue. And you feel those come out a little bit later on, but you can really feel the sort of dryness of the wood, the kind of woody flavours come out a wee bit more as well. This beer definitely gets drier and drier the further that you go into the aftertaste, but to me it comes across as a really sort of infused flavour profile. But yeah, I think it's really nice. This is definitely an interesting one. This is why I still do these reviews, because you can find stuff that tests your palate a little bit and it makes you think, and this beer is certainly doing that. So kudos to Närke Kulturbryggeri for doing something a wee bit different, even, you know, within this this kind of more traditional style bracket, if you like. But yeah, it certainly works and it has my approval, 100%. But yeah, I think that covers the backbone of the beer for sure. So yeah, on that middle third of your palate, then let's focus on what's on top of that base layer. So you do get a wee bit of brown sugar right in the middle of your palate. There's a wee bit of a kind of sweet, slightly kind of concentrated caramelly note on top of that. As you move further out from the kind of centre of your palate there, it's got a nice kind of toasty or brown sugary element to it, and then as you move further out towards the edge of the palate, you might get a more kind of grainy biscuity sort of thing. And I would say that sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity quality that you're getting out of this one, it does give the beer a little bit more you know, I think that kind of contributes to the sort of dryness that I'm talking about with this beer. And it's a nice dryness. It's not like, you know, cloying or anything like this. It is just a nice kind of smooth dryness. And the beer almost becomes a little bit leathery in a sense the further you go into the aftertaste with it. It's almost you know, the flavour profile is nothing like whiskey, of course, but it almost has a bit of that kind of peated whiskey type vibe to it, of course. But like I say, the smoky character you get out of this is quite different. I do wonder if anyone's ever done a whiskey using Bamberg Rauch malts. There probably is somebody in Bamberg or in that Franconia region that's done it. So if anyone knows about that, let me know, because I would love to try a Bamberg Rauch malt whiskey. That could be something. That would certainly be something to behold. But yeah, the middle third of your palate in this one is really quite nice. In some ways it's very straight shooting. It's certainly not the most complex of beers that I've come across, but I really like it, and I really like how the flavour develops in this one the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, that's the middle third of your palate in this beer for sure. So, border region between middle third and back third of your palate. Going on top of that, in that border region there, you can feel a little bit of a bready build-up. Once again, there's a wee bit of a slightly stronger grainy dryness there. And as you go into the back third of your palate, a little bit, I think the dryness gets a little bit more intense there. There's a wee bit more graininess to it, and a bit of a smoother kind of bready quality sitting on top of that as well. But sitting on top of the that back third of your tongue, you can feel some of the more yeasty elements coming out of the beer as well. But yeah, it's a little bit more kind of airy in a sense, and it is more of a kind of wholemeal bread. But you do feel a wee bit of the kind of smoky flavours infused within that too, which is very interesting, definitely. But yeah, if you start from the back of your palate, of course, you can feel the flavour is a little bit kind of taller in a sense. It condenses down as you move further forward. Then as you go into that middle third of your palate, you do get you do get a little bit more of a say. You do get a little bit more of a say, just kind of condensed sort of thing about it, if you like. You can feel that the flavours are just a wee bit more kind of squashed together. But yeah, the aftertaste of this one, I think this beer really shines as you go into the aftertaste. Hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you do get a nice little bit of earthiness out of this beer, and it's quite I would say that relative to other German type beers I've had, it is quite a kind of prominent earthiness. It's got a little bit more kind of pungency to it in a sense. But as you move further forward from that, it does develop a slight herbal quality, and you can actually feel a little bit of the smokiness kind of spilling over onto the sides of your palate with this one. But as you push further forward, the kind of earthy herbal sort of thing fades away, then you get a nice little bit of floral aromaticity on the front corners of your palate. Round the front curve of the tongue as well, I would say you're getting a little bit of a more kind of brighter grassy sort of thing. There's a wee touch of a very slight citrusy zest to this one, a bit of that kind of fresh cut grass, but I think it works out very, very nicely in that sense. The green component of this beer does work very, very well actually. But yeah, it is very, very nice. So yeah, I think the green component of this one suits everything quite well. Just a little bit of floral, a very slight kind of floral brightness to it, and a bit of a kind of zesty grassiness. So it just adds to the complexity of the beer actually. But let's focus on the kind of fruity side of things then. Front third of your palate. So border region between front and middle third of your palate. Again, there's a bit of a kind of bread crusty build up in there, a wee bit of a grainy sort of thing. And yeah, I can certainly appreciate how that goes together. But on the as we say, on the base of that front third of your palate, it actually feels even more dry in a sense. I think it's a little bit drier there, so a bit of a more toasty bread crust in there. You do get a wee bit of the kind of smoky sort of thing in it as well, and a bit of a kind of smoother bread. But sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. The fruits that you get out of this one and the flavour incidentally are quite similar to what you pick up in the aroma. But yeah, on the back of that front third of your palate then, as I say, there's a wee bit of a kind of, you do get, mainly it's a kind of dried apricot-y sort of thing that you get out of this one, potentially a little bit of a kind of sultana type quality in there, but I'm reluctant to say sultanas, although not 100% sure. Just to be clear, because people have questioned me on this, when I say sultanas, what I mean is the dried white green sort of grapes, whereas raisins to me would be the kind of dried purple grapes. I think there's a bit of things with, differences between American American and European English in a sense there. But anyway, so yeah, there is a wee touch of a kind of sultana type thing in there, maybe a little hint of a dried apricot, a little bit of a pear. It's these kind of dried fruit notes that are sitting on the back half of that front third of your palate. But as you move forward into the front half of the front third of your palate, or the front sixth of your tongue, whatever you want to call it, you do get more of a kind of slightly red fruity quality to this one. There's a wee bit of a light kind of figgy note in there, and then maybe a wee tiny touch of a kind of juicier black currant as you reach the very kind of front tip of your tongue. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting. It's got the dried fruity characters I was talking about, and just a little touch of the red fruit, and those are things, of course, that we did pick up on in the the front from the Aroma. Sorry, brain's not working. Always get brain farts in these videos these days. But yeah, I think that summarises the flavour of this one quite well, to be honest. So let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, this beer is kind of what you'd expect. It's mid-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth in this one. It does have a little bit of slickness to it, which is kind of what you would expect from a slightly heavier and more malty leaning lager beer. Absolutely. So you do get a nice little bit of slickness to this one. You can kind of feel the cleanliness of the Nordic water in here. I comment on this all the time in the videos. The Danish, Swedish, Norwegian beers, the Finnish ones and Icelandic ones as well. You always get this kind of Nordic cleanliness to the beers actually, and you can feel that in this one. In terms of bitterness, I'm a little bit unsure what to say about this beer, because you have got a bit of dryness to it from the malty side of things, like I said, and the woodiness in the beer. The hops are contributing a little bit as well, so maybe this beer could be something like 30 or 40, maybe 40, even 40 IBUs, and that's from both malt and from hops. But yeah, I like how I do like how that side of things. I do like how that goes together for sure. But yeah, a wee bit more bitterness, I would say. But the malty side of things, bit of dryness, bit of smoothness, and a bit of kind of sweetness and toastiness in there. I think it goes together really well. Nice little bit of a juicy, fruity element, as I said to you. But this is definitely a kind of drier beer. It's not exactly what I expected. As I say, I think the correct stylistic description of this beer would be like a Doppelheller Rauchbock. I think that's probably a good descriptor of this one. But as I say, I would love to see what Närke Kulturbryggeri would do with a more, I don't know if it's right to call it a kind of traditional sense Doppelbock, like a Celebrator or a Maximator type Doppelbock, you know, one of the more kind of brown sugary type ones, rather than the more biscuity, lighter Heller type things. But yeah, regardless of what style of beer this is, the main message to take away is that this is a nice one. I've enjoyed trying it. It's made me think a little bit about the styles, of course, and that is definitely something that I appreciate about Närke Kulturbryggeri. They do make you think a little bit about their beers sometimes, but they're very solid in these traditional English and German style beers, as I've repeated a few times. Let's round off the review there though, and we'll go and watch the Swedish game. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Närke Kulturbryggeri, and do give me some kind of Heller Doppelbock recommendations as well, because I think that's a style that I do want to explore a wee bit more. But this one was the Katalysator, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, probably not, an 8% Heller Doppelheller Doppelheller Rauchbock, I guess we could say, from Närke Kulturbryggeri in Örebro here in Sweden. Thank you again for watching. Let's go and watch the Swedish game. Heja Sverige. See you guys very soon. Slange, skull, cheers. Check out my social media. Check out Närke Kulturbryggeri. See you on the next review.